Everyone, it's me, John. So I just wanted to report on a little development with my silly plotter project. So once you've made one of these plotting robots, something you'll want to do is be able to take, art off the internet. And pardon me for the noise of the plotter operating in the background, but you'll want to take an image like this, let's say, and then convert that into a path that you could actually plot on the plotter. And so you'll see lots of forums where people are looking at ready-made solutions, like where could I find some, coordinate SVG art, or how can I parse that stuff? And I just wanted to tell you about my particular way of doing this. It's by no means the best way, but nobody told me how to do this, and it took me a little while to figure out, so I thought I'd put this up there so that people could have an easier time with it. Okay, so step one is pretty easy. You grab your piece of art, whatever it is. It could be this Santa Cruz hand logo, and you just download that JPEG, and you upload it to something like picsvg.com, which would take that picture and then convert it into a usable SVG image. I'll just do some different image right now, maybe something else that I'm working on. So I want to have a nice piece of like Chris Ware cartoon illustration for my wall or something. So this would dump an SVG file, which is a sort of an XML file. Let me see if I have one handy here for you. I should definitely. So here's an example of an SVG file, if I open it up. Now you can see that these SVGs are human readable, not that you would want to actually use them that way. So the types of file, this is actually the file that was generated by pic2svg.com. You can see that mostly it's these path primitives, which really are just sets of relative coordinates, and they might have some sort of transformation or scale applied to them. There are a bunch of Pythonic libraries for parsing these SVGs, like for example there's SVG path, there's other packages, but all of these packages have the problem that instead of parsing an SVG into really simple coordinates, they parse an SVG into into another abstract representation, like usually like some sort of list of Pythonic objects, not simple coordinate pairs. And so then instead of parsing your SVG file, you have to parse your SVG file and then parse the output of your SVG file parser, which is never how I like to do things. I'm a really direct person. So what I did was I took this this SVG, and actually the output of this pic2svg is black and white. So first I brought up Inkscape, and let me just, here's another little SVG that I'm working on. I haven't colored it in yet. So I went in here and I used the bucket tool to just clean up this SVG a little bit. In any place where, for example here, if I colored this in, the color would bleed, I would just use this tool that would allow you to modify the paths of the SVG to close that gap so that the fill would work. Alright? And then the result of all that is an SVG that looks like this, where it colors in properly, and I've colored it in with the colors that I wanted. And now the question is, how do we take this SVG and turn it into something that we can plot? Well, instead of using someone else's library, I just kind of wrote my own tool, and it couldn't parse every possible SVG, but it can parse the output of Inkscape and the pic2svg website. And if I needed it to parse some other part of SVG that it currently can't do yet, then I could actually customize it to do that. So now what I can do is in my little image notebook, I can just call this SVG to path routine, and then it will take this SVG, which you might see on a website, and convert it into this SVG, where if you can see, all of the colors are actually hatched in as horizontal lines here, and all of the outline paths have been nicely done. So this is something that the plotter can actually plot. plotting that rendered SVG now. I changed the gondola I'm using right now. I also added these heat sinks onto the motors, which was another really good change. So maybe I'll attach an image if this plot succeeds of what actually comes out on the other end. Bye-bye.